Welcome back to another inductive study with 4Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. So we're continuing our study from Mark chapter 2, verses 18 and onward. I'm not entirely sure where we're stopping, but it looks like it's probably going to be verse 22. You see that on one side of my screen, I have the Evernote app opened up with the inductive study method. Observation, what did I hear? Interpretation, what does it mean? And application, what do I need to do? If you haven't yet seen the video on how to do your own inductive study, please go ahead and follow that link so you can figure out how to do your own inductive study. I've created a good video for you. On the right side of the screen, I've got Olive Tree app opened up, and I just really appreciate the Olive Tree app because not only does it have all of the versions of the Bible that I like to refer to, but it also has a number of commentary sets and other resources that I like to use during the times that I make Bible studies, when I'm preparing to speak, or when I'm doing these New Living Translations. And during the interpretation part of this, I need some commentary help. I love all of the resources that are in that app. Okay, so here we go, beginning at verse 18, reading from the New Living Translation. Once, when John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, some people came to Jesus and asked, "Why don't your disciples fast like John's disciples and the Pharisees do?" Jesus replied, "Do wedding guests fast while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. They can't fast while the groom is with them. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast." Okay. Besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear than before. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the wine would burst the wineskins, and the wine and the skins would both be lost. New wine calls for new wineskins. Okay, so I'm loving this text. As a leader, I really love it. I need to think this one through because my head immediately goes to the second part of this passage and says, yeah, I think I know what this is talking about. So seeing how church cultures or group cultures can transition into something, and you're trying to, when you're leading a group and you're trying to help the group change, so maybe you're leading a system that's entropic and you're trying to open up the boundaries so that it can receive new information. You're trying to help it to adapt to a new way of doing things. That's like sewing a new patch of cloth onto an old piece of clothing, and there is a tear away because the change isn't compatible with what the old system, how the old system wants to stabilize. So I love that from a systems perspective, and from a regenerating churches, revitalizing churches perspective. I totally get what this is saying, but it's starting with fasting, and I don't immediately make the connect. So I'm going to run this through the three inductive questions, and I'll let you know what I come up with on this text. And I really hope that you come up with something different, because I really love talking these things out. And okay, so see you after the jump. So I've run the text through the inductive study questions, and here's what I came up with. I'm thinking that this entire text can be summarized with the title Followership and Incompatibility. I'm going to make that simple for you to understand as we go through the text here. What did I hear? Probably the same things that kind of jump out to you, but hopefully not. Hopefully something different jumps out into the text, but it's pretty straightforward. Like John's disciples were fasting. People were asking why Jesus weren't doing the same. So here's how Jesus replied. I'm starting to understand as well why the whole fasting thing starts, and why the fasting thing leads to Jesus' discussion of entropic systems, I would think, and how they become new again. So basically, why, Jesus, aren't you doing the old religious stuff, the old religious tradition that we all know it definitely works to get us to God? Some would say, why aren't you doing the old stuff? And so here's Jesus' reply. Wedding guests don't fast while the groom is present. They fast when he's not there. So that's almost a transition statement to get him from their mindset to where he wants to bring the conversation to. No one puts a patch of new cloth onto the old cloth. New cloth rip away. No one puts new wine into old wineskins. They burst. Both the skins and the wine are ruined. They're lost. New wine needs new wineskins. And Yeah, man, I wish that you and I had similar lived experiences. Taking a couple of churches through any kind of process of regenerating, this text totally jumps out to me, and I can see why some churches have such a hard time regenerating, why some churches can't change, how they're stuck in old systems. And I can see why it's so hard for some churches, particularly now in the pandemic, to adjust to doing church online and connecting online, because some churches they love the people that are there, and they have these really great relationships with each other, and they have a system that they feel is stable, and they don't understand why change is necessary, and they don't understand the problem with having such closed boundaries that they're no longer able to listen to the community, and they're no longer able to adapt with what's going on in the real world. And I see how hard it is for some churches. I mean, that's my context. The systems that I work with are families and churches. I see why it's so hard for some churches to adapt, because, man, and I see all of the work that can go into regenerating churches, revitalizing churches, and how a lot of the times, probably 9 times out of 10, it's almost wasted, because there's a settling of this old system, and it feels stable on the inside, and all the work of regenerating basically is just, you could say, it's rejected and lost, because the people in that system just want to go back to the way it used to be. And Jesus basically in his response here is, you can't put new wine into old wineskins, because both are going to be lost. All the effort that you put into revitalizing something old is just going to be lost. And this, of course, is setting up the context for when we get to that huge statement that Jesus makes later on in Mark, that if you have faith, then you can tell this mountain to throw itself into a sea. It was actually a moment where Jesus says that I'm done with the temple cult. I'm done with the old covenant. The temple cult's roots are so bad, are so corrupt, that they can't be redeemed. They can't be regenerated. They can't be revitalized. So the sea, a place of judgment, where everything goes in the sea, is just symbolically the place of judgment. Jesus says he's taking this mountain that's the temple cult is built on, and throwing that whole old system into the sea as an act of judgment, that it's not capable of being redeemed, and starting fresh with the new covenant. So right here, we're seeing the foundation being laid to the judgment that he's going to make later, that the entropic system of the temple cult that we're going to see demonstrated, illustrated to us all through the Gospel of Mark, that it's going to be judged later. This is so awesome. I love this text. It's so real. It's so relevant to my lived experience anyways, in dealing with systems and trying to help systems regenerate and trying to revitalize something so real today. And it's also real for you. So let's see if we can bring the text out a little bit and see if it makes sense to you too in what you're experiencing. So here's what it means to me. First, the crowd pressures Jesus into doing what used to be done, right? What the religious people are all already doing. We see that these days, as everyone is embracing to get back to life as it was before COVID, right? We want to be back with our friends. Churches want to be gathering again. And of course we do. I even want to be gathering again. I'm not digital native. My kids are digital native. They were born practically with iPhones and iPads in their hands. Me, not so much. I kind of grew into this stuff, but my kids are born into this stuff, right? I'm not digital native, and because I'm not digital native, I really miss connecting with people in real life space. I do also love connecting with people on Zoom as well, but there's something inside of me that really also wants to connect in a real space as well. I get it. And this is something that Jesus is highlighting here. So the crowd compares Jesus' activity with the people who are genuinely religious and the people who are kingdom aggressors. The crowd can't distinguish what is real or beneficial. So they see how the religious people are doing it. But Jesus and his crew, they're genuine, they're real, and they're pursuing God, they're connecting with God. But the people from the outside, and even the people on the inside of that religious system, they look at this new thing and they don't know what to do with it. They say, stop, you need to be doing the old thing. It's like the crudes. I remember in the crudes, never not be afraid and don't eat that, it's new. always be afraid, and we don't like new. And it just reminds me of the backwards idea from the movie of the Croods. The crowd has no idea that they what they need because they have not received Jesus. They can't hear the message. Remember, the crowd culture has transitioned the crowd so they can no longer really hear Jesus because they're coming to Jesus for show now. So they can't hear the message, probably because their expectations are for show, because they're looking for a show. They expect to see something that they would recognize. And that makes sense, right? I mean, you go to a zoo, you expect to see animals there, zoo-like animals there. You walk by, you wave hi, throw them something to eat, whatever. You kind of get to know that experience, right? You're going to Metro Toronto Zoo. I like to go there with my kids occasionally. It's a very far drive, but I like to go there occasionally. We like to go on the Zoomobile. That's one of our expectations. We go there, we look around, we maybe go on the splash pad, we go on the Zoomobile, we go there for some fun, right? It's an attraction. And so people are coming to Jesus as an attraction now with an expectation that, Jesus, you should be meeting my expectations of what an attraction really should be. And Jesus doesn't meet those expectations because he's not an attraction. He's actually really showing us this is how to connect with God. So here's the point. One of the points I think I'm coming up with. The world's kingdom is really easy for crowds to spot. God's kingdom is really hard for crowds to hear, receive, follow, become agents of. When the crowd can't engage with the big four, they just simply can't understand it. And so we have a crowd here. They're not genuinely listening. They're not receiving Jesus. They're not following Jesus, except hoping that he's going to give them a show. They're certainly not stepping into agents. The crowd isn't helping Jesus to make this a movement. They're not owning the message and sharing the message like it's their own. They're not becoming agents of the message. There's no movement happening here within the crowd. The crowd, likely because the crowd culture is incompatible with Jesus' mission, they're becoming kingdom aggressors now. So although they're not fully aggressive, they're just off course and they want Jesus to follow their course. So we have some tension here I'm seeing in the text where Jesus is genuinely showing people how to connect with God, but the people who are wanting an experience from Jesus that they can understand, that they can see, that they can touch, an experience based on their past, not based on a better future. They just don't really want to be changed, right? They're coming for the show. They're coming because they want to feel good about themselves, maybe. They're coming because they want Jesus to say something awesome, which brings them out of the humdrum, mundane life that they have, and, oh, this is fun, this is exciting. That's what they want from Jesus. They can't hear it. So the crowd is kind of becoming all of them kind of becoming kingdom aggressors as they press into Jesus, say, Jesus, stop doing what you're doing. Stop doing something real. Stop doing something that's going to change me. Stop doing something that's going to connect me with God. Instead, do something that I recognize, do something that I can manage, do something that I can do. Right? That's kind of what they're saying. Second, Jesus does not allow the crowd to set his mission. This is awesome. He's on point here. To the kingdom aggressors, he just takes a hard stand. And unfortunately, sometimes you just got to take a hard stand. If you're trying to help an entropic system become negatropic, if you're trying to help a system that's dying, a system that's plateaued, to revitalize, to rejuvenate, and become healthy again. Sometimes you'll bump into the people who are just headbutting with you, saying, "No, I don't recognize this. No, I don't want this." You got to take a hard stand. This is the path. This is the direction where we're going. Jesus' mission is followership, and he doesn't change that mission. Jesus redirects the crowd instead of meeting their expectations. He redirects them to what's really going on here. People need to be new. People need to change a heart. People need to change of mind. They need to listen to Jesus, receive him, and become followers rather than telling Jesus, this is what's up here. If Jesus allowed the crowd to change the mission, the crowd then becomes Jesus' leader. In revitalizing, regenerating some systems, some church systems in particular, it's easy to see why the initiator of change within a local assembly doesn't last throughout the whole process, because there are kingdom aggressors in there, and they don't know that they're kingdom aggressors. They just like the past more than they like the future, and they don't trust the future as much as they trust the past. They can feel, they can touch, they know. They look back with nostalgia, and that change agent who's in that assembly trying to change and bring life to the assembly. they're forced to take a hard ground and say, this is the mission, this is the direction that we're going to. And sometimes it just becomes a fight. And when it becomes a fight, the person as the change agent can't stay and say, okay, it's done. You have your entropic system, and I'm going to have to hightail it out of here and go somewhere else where they'll receive me. And Jesus actually does that. And he demonstrates he's got an exit plan for entropic systems, and he teaches us to dust the stand off of our feet. So he's this right here is the beginning of the whole sub story throughout the Gospel of Mark about transitioning old to new, and showing us that sometimes the stuff that's old, it's impossible to transition, start with new. And it actually targets the old covenant, the temple cult, and says that actually can't be transitioned. It's so corrupt, it's entropic, it's like, we just got to kill it. We just got to let it die. And so we got to start with the New Testament. There has to be a new way of coming to God. And we're going to start with something new. So this begins that whole sub story within the Gospel of Mark about what to do with the temple cult. Thirdly, Jesus is doing something new. This pops out to me. The new thing that Jesus is doing is incompatible with what is being done at the moment. Even within the sincere people, it's just incompatible. It's incompatible with the kingdom of the world. It's incompatible with the practices of the kingdom of aggressors, for sure. Actually, the new thing that Jesus is doing is in conflict with everything else because it's done in God's authority and with God's power. The new thing that Jesus is doing becomes a point of a power struggle of everything else that's incompatible with it. And there's a real power struggle as a kingdom or as a system that's not the system that Jesus is bringing. So the system that Jesus is bringing, the kingdom of God, the system that Jesus is bringing right here and right now, is a system based on forgiveness and faith. So we have faith in Jesus to receive him, and then we receive forgiveness. So it's faith and forgiveness. And then once that's the entrance point into the system, placing your faith in Jesus and receiving forgiveness. That's the entrance point into the system. Now that we're in the system, what does that look like? Well, we're followers of Jesus. And following Jesus looks like I'm going to love God first, I'm going to love others second. And then I'm going to step into agency and become part of this movement to share about this new kingdom, this new system in Jesus with everybody else. So then I become a kingdom agent. Fourth, Jesus' new thing, the new thing that he's doing, needs to be from the ground up. He can't go into an old system and revitalize that old system, bring that old system into something. He can't. He's teaching us that new wine going into old wineskins would cause the old wineskin system to burst. It's not compatible with the new wine system that's coming. He says it's not compatible. Jesus is laying this new foundation. He's teaching a new perspective. He's teaching a new worldview. He's forming new leaders for this new system called the kingdom of God. Jesus doesn't and he can't attempt to do his new thing in an old environment. And that's what this is saying. And this is the seed of a larger sub-storyline that we're going to see throughout the Gospel of Mark. And that larger sub-storyline is this, that the new thing is going to replace the old thing. There's a new covenant coming, and it's impossible for that new covenant to find its place in the old covenant. The old covenant, by the time we reach the Gospel of Mark, has become the temple cult, has become something that isn't compatible with God really at all. It's become corrupt. And so Jesus says, this is irredeemable. I'm going to start a new thing, and if I started there, it would just burst anyways, so we're going to start with a new covenant. We're going to start with a new way of coming to God, and that's faith and forgiveness. So put your faith in Jesus, to receive him, and he's going to forgive you, and that's your entrance into this new system, into the kingdom of God. That's how you become a Christian. And then after that, be a follower of Jesus. Adopt the mindset of a follower with all the humility and that's required of being following Jesus, and then embrace a system of loving God and loving others. So what do I need to do? My application points here are coming from my perspective as a planter, coming from my perspective of a guy who wants to do something new, because I've seen a lot of incompatibility with mission from places where I've served and ministered in. So for me to be committed to the mission of followership, I can't do that in a culture that's not compatible with followership. There are some cultures that are just incompatible with mission. And what's the mission? God is on mission to be made known. To that mission, he has given the church. The church doesn't have its own mission. The church is not following its mission. The church is following God's mission because it's mission first and then church. So mission informs soteriology, informs ecclesiology. Mission, starting with the mission that God is on a mission to be made known. That's his mission. He wants to be known by his creation. He created us to be known by him, and so that we know him and he knows us. That's why we were created. We fell away from that. And so the mission then informs soteriology, the theology of salvation. So we fell away from God, and so now we have the theology of salvation, which is informing us that God is on mission to be made known, and he's doing something to restore the broken relationship so he can know us and we can know him again. So to that mission, he has given a church. So now the church we are now in God's mission of being made known and on God's mission of making him known. So within the church, we have this wonderful privilege of knowing God, and with the privilege of knowing God comes the responsibility of making God known. Just like the greatest commandment was summarized with a twofer, two commandments for the price of one, basically. So somebody approached Jesus asking, what's the greatest commandment? And Jesus says, well, it's to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. So both of them, right? So that's the same with being in the church. We love God and we love others. So we love God and grow in our relationship with him and with other believers. And also we love the world, grow in our relationship with people who don't know Jesus and lead them to Jesus. There is a responsibility of knowing God, and the responsibility of knowing God is to make him known. And unfortunately, there are too many religious systems where people are trapped in a system. And I'll say trapped in a system because they really don't know. They're trapped in a system, I don't think they know. They're trapped in a system where they're afraid of evangelism, they're afraid of outreach, they're afraid of talking about Jesus, and so they don't. So the system is not compatible with mission. They don't understand that the church, that the mission was given to church. They don't understand that the responsibility of being a Christian isn't to show up to church on Sundays and sing Jesus songs and get closer to God and closer to the other people in church, and that's it. The mission of the church is to do that, and at the same time reach out to the people around us and let them know that this new system exists, and the entrance to get in this new system is faith in Jesus and receive forgiveness. And the system is all about loving God first, loving others second. Both have to be present. And so I can't be in a system that's incompatible with mission, because to transition a culture that's incompatible with mission is like pouring new wine into old wineskins. It doesn't work. It does blow up. And it looks to me like 9 out of 10 churches who have plateaued, who are off mission, that try to regenerate. The initiating agent of change in that church tends to be the senior pastor. That senior pastor doesn't survive the process, and that church chooses not to regenerate. And so the church just has to, the denomination or whatever it's part of just has to wait till that church fizzles out and then give the building and any money that it has to a planter. If it has any money left, give it to a planter to start something new. So I need to start something new and be very clear about what the new thing I'm doing is, so that when pushback comes, I'm ready to redirect the crowd. The new thing that we're doing, 4Community, is creating community spaces where you can connect with others and God. And I love it. I loved it pre-COVID. I think it was really applicable because it was locally intentional. So we were reaching out to our neighbors to try to bring them into community. So we first work on building friendships with each other, and through the process of real, genuine friendship building, we can also talk about our best friend, which is God. That's not offensive to do. And so now that we're in COVID, that we're online only, it's a little trickier trying to reach out and befriend other people in just a digital world. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I'm not digital native. I see the younger peeps doing it much better than I am because they're digital native and they understand how social media works and they're rocking it, where I'm kind of fumbling a little bit, but I'm engaged in 4Community and I'm loving it. So we are reaching out to people, and people are coming to to get to know each other, and God is a part of that as well. And it doesn't feel like church. It doesn't feel like a religious thing that already exists. It feels like people getting to know each other, and God is also a part of that open mic discussion that we have. So I'm liking it anyways. I need to make sure the crowd doesn't influence me away from the mission of followership. As the crowd grows, there's going to be a point where the crowd starts to come. I would think if this really does become a movement, there'll be a point where the crowd comes and they'll have some kind of expectation about what 4Community is supposed to be. I'm going to need to be ready to not give up the mission, and I'm going to need to be ready to redirect and say, this is what the mission is. Would you like to join us? So here's what I'm thinking. Start new. Don't be tempted to lead a culture that's old. New and old are incompatible and will either destroy each other's efforts or will destroy followership and revert to the old thing. It's what's going to happen. So I need to plant, pioneer, figure it out. It's the only way for me. That's my conclusion. That's my commitment. Having been pastoring, I guess I was 21 when I started as an intern at a church, and I had my job was to lead the kids choir, and the junior high group, and I loved it. It was awesome, and I've been sort of in it ever since, and I'm 47 now, so it's been 26 years doing this thing, and I've had the chance to work in several churches, and I noticed that when a church culture gets to the point where it's entropic, when it's set in its ways, and it can't receive information from the outside of the system. And even within the system, between the subgroups, there's no flow of information, and it's got a failure to adapt. That is a really tough go, particularly with a guy like me that tends to score high on evangelism. That is a really tough go, because when a system is set in its way, and it already has demonstrated a failure to adapt, then what happens is the only way a system can restabilize under those conditions is to reject the agent of change. Because it's the agent of change that's created instability in the system, and they don't want to change, so they reject the agent of change. I don't want to be there anymore. Not on the inside. I would love to be on a team that we could do a structural coupling with an organization with. That would be awesome. I would love to do that. But as a lead pastor, being the agent of change, no, way too much stress. It's not. I hesitate to say it's not possible, but 1 in 10 chances. There's a 10% possibility perhaps that it is possible, but for the most part, it's not possible. Here's my summary. The passage reveals that the crowd, which are the people who have not embraced followership, is stuck in an old religious system, and they're attempting to influence Jesus away from his mission. Jesus redirects the crowd and points them back to the mission. That's the summary. I've got a prayer point here, and I've actually cut it down. I had a much bigger prayer point this time, but most of that was just personal about me as a planter. So here's the abbreviated version. Jesus, I really need your help with everything. Wouldn't you say that too? Jesus, I really need your help with everything. Please help me to live as a follower of you, and please help me to do this new thing called followership. That's it from me. If you don't already have a community that you're connected with, please consider connecting with 4Community, where we're creating community spaces right now that looks like a lot of Zoom meetings. And also we're doing some curbside drive-bys as well, and I'm dropping off some really cool stuff to some teenagers too. Dropping off s'mores kits, sort of marshmallows and granola bars and chocolates and stuff, so that it feels like kids are camping at home, and just driving by with any kind of goodies just to help people's moods get better. But it's mostly Zoom meetings. So 4Community, creating community spaces where we can connect with each other and also connect with God. Would you please consider being a part of what we're doing? And I appreciate you. Thanks for your time. And I'll see you next time.